أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه تبارك وتعالى في محكم كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ما آتاكم الرسول فخذوه وما نهاكم عنه فانتهوا واتقوا الله إن الله شديد العقاب. صلوات على محمد. In continuing with our discussion, having realized that Allah Azza wa Jal, being the wise creator that He is, the wise and kind Lord that He is, after creating us, He has to guide us. And in order to guide us, He sends His prophets, He sends His special chosen ones. And especially for the Muslims, we know that our Holy Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi brought the divine revelation, which is the Holy Quran. And yesterday we saw how it is not possible for each and every one of us to understand everything that is in the Quran. And that is why we need the interpreters of the Quran to come and interpret the Quran for us and guide us as to the meaning of the verses of the Quran. And that is the idea of the hadith al-thiqlain, the two weighty things, which is Kitab Allah, the book of Allah, and the itrah of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Those who lived at the time of the Prophet had easy access to him. If they did not understand the verses of the Quran, if they were stuck in some respects, they would go to the Prophet. And after the Prophet, those who lived in the time of the A'imma alayhimus salam would have easy access, and they would go to the A'imma alayhimus salam to ask when they did not know something and they needed clarification. However, after 1,400 years, we sit here today as Muslims, as believers, as lovers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. For us, unfortunately, we do not have the same access that those people at that time had. What we do have, however, is a collection and a compilation of narrations that are called the ahadith. And so if we do not understand aspects of the Quran, one of the things we turn to is the hadith. However, as far as hadith is concerned, we need to ask ourselves the same question we asked with regards to the Quran. And that is, can we interpret the hadith, or do we also need special qualifications for understanding the hadith? We know that hadith is something that we cannot do without. There are some Muslims who call themselves the Quraniyun, These are people who follow in the same motto that was pronounced during the time when the Holy Prophet was on his deathbed, the motto, Hasbuna Kitab Allah. These people until today, they have the same motto. They say, we do not need hadith, we only refer to the Quran. And they have their own evidence. Those who are interested to know about the evidence of these people can check the works of people like Ahmad Subhi Mansoor. He has written a book, Al-Quran wa Kafa. Quran is enough. Or you can refer to the works of other scholars like George Tarabishi, who has written Min Islam al-Quran ila Islam al-Hadith. You can find out from these works of these Quraniyun what their evidence is, and you will realize that their evidence is very flimsy. The Muslims, all of them agree that we need to hold on to both the Quran and the Sunnah, the Quran and the Ahadith. The problem arises when we look at the Hadith, we find that it is made up of two parts. It's made up of the Sanad and the Matan. So it looks a bit more complicated even than the verses of the Quran. Because first we have to establish who has said this Hadith. You have to look at the line of narrators, the chain of narrators, to establish whether this Hadith was really said by the Prophet, was it really said by the Imam, and then you come to look at the contents, the Matan of the Hadith. Our first Imam, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, was approached by Sulaym ibn Qais al-Hilali. You know, Sulaym ibn Qais al-Hilali was one of the close companions of the first Imam. And he even has a book which is known as Kitab Sulaym ibn Qais, which has been translated into English also. Of course, the scholars have a discussion about the authenticity of that book. Is it really the book of Sulaym or not? But regardless, we find that one day Sulaym ibn Qais comes to the Imam and asks, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, we listen and we hear the ahadith of the Prophet from different people, from different companions, but when we come to you, we find that you have different kind of narrations. Why is it that your narrations are different and their narrations are different? So Imam Ali alayhi salam, in a lengthy narration, he starts telling him, "Oh Sulaym, you know that people have mixed the truth and batil, haqq and batil. And during the time of the Prophet also, some people ascribed lies to the Prophet, until the Prophet himself had to climb on the mimbar and say, oh people, many are those who ascribe lies to me. He had to warn the people. Then he says, Sulaym, there are 4 types of people who narrate the ahadith. Number 1, the munafiqeen. These are those who lie about us, the Ahlul Bayt. They make up stories about us. What they say is not correct about us. Number 2, these are those people who listen to our words, who listen to the words of the Prophet and to the words of Ahlul Bayt, but they do not understand our words. So when they narrate, they don't narrate it correctly because they have not understood. And the third group of people are those who listen and they understand, but they do not listen to the whole narration. Sometimes the Prophet will allow something, but after some time, because there is maslaha, he will forbid that thing. This is called naskh. The way we have naskh in Quran, we have naskh in hadith also. So Imam Ali alayhi salam tells Sulaym, Sulaym, the third group of people, they will hear correctly, they will understand correctly, but they will not hear the whole story. They will not know the complete hadith. They will hear the first part and not the second part. And then finally are those people who listen to the hadith, who understand the hadith, who hear the complete hadith, and then they relate the hadith. These are the people from whom you should accept our ahadith. And therefore we realize that out of these 4 people, only one group are those from whom we can accept the hadith of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Now tonight we want to look at some of the complexities regarding hadith, so that we understand that it is not easy for anybody just to open any book of hadith and read hadith and come up with conclusions. You will remember In the recent past, there have been individuals sending out booklets with hadith as their evidence for certain things. They say this is not in Islam because of one hadith, two hadith, three hadith, four hadith, and you find, mashallah, this person has got so much evidence. But after you see what it entails to understand the hadith, you will realize, no, not anyone can understand the hadith of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So the first point we want to see with regards to complexity is that our ahadith have been tampered with. There has been intentional tampering and there has been unintentional tampering. What is unintentional tampering? One example I can give you. In the book Majma'ul Bayan, which is a book of tafsir which has many ahadith inside, it is written by Tabarsi. Tabarsi quotes many ahadith from Sheikh Tusi, rahmatullah alayh. In Sheikh Tusi, he takes the ahadith from Sheikh Tusi's book At-Tibyan. Now, Sheikh Tusi, rahmatullah alayh, he often quotes from Sunni sources. So many times he would quote from Tabari. You know, Tabari is a Sunni scholar, very well known, Muhammad ibn Jarir ibn Yazid al-Tabari. The kunya of Tabari is Abu Ja'far. So Sheikh Tusi would write in his book At-Tibyan, Qala Abu Ja'far, and then he would quote what Tabari has said. Now in those days we did not have computers, there were no photocopying machines. So whenever somebody wanted a copy of a book, they would have to copy it by hand. So those people who copied the book of Sheikh Tusi, when they came to Abu Ja'far, they thought this must be our fifth Imam, Imam Muhammad Baqir salawatullahi wa salam alayhi. So they added alayhi salam after his name. That's all that they did. With good intentions. They said Abu Ja'far is fifth Imam. Maybe Sheikh Tusi forgot to write alayhi salam. So they just added alayhi salam when they were making copies of that book. A couple of centuries later now, the author of Majma'ul Bayan is quoting from Sheikh Tusi rahmatullah alayh, and he says, قال الباقر عليه السلام, and he brings the same quotation, which is not from the Imam, it is from Tabari. This is an unintentional tampering. They did not mean anything bad. But those who don't understand the hadith, they will open Majma'ul Bayan, oh, this is hadith of 50 Imam. They will come and they will argue with it. They don't know this is not from 50 Imam. This was a mistake. That is unintentional tampering. Then we come to examples of intentional tampering. Our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. He tells us about one individual by the name of Mughira bin Sa'id. He said there was one individual, may Allah curse him. His name is Mughira ibn Sa'id. He used to attend the gatherings where my father, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, where my father used to teach, and this man, Mughira ibn Sa'id, would quietly sit in one corner, and after the lesson was over, he would come and take the notebooks of the companions of my father. The sixth Imam is saying. And he would go and make changes and additions to that notebook, to those notebooks, and then he would give them back to the companions and he would spread them around. And that is why so many traditions have come attributed to my father, the fifth Imam, but it is all a lie. This is what the sixth Imam. This is an example of intentional tampering of hadith. At the time of Muawiyah, there was a factory of hadith fabrication. Muawiyah once calls a man known as Samara ibn Jundab. Samara, he says, you are a preacher. I want you to climb on the mimbar and make up a hadith against Imam Ali alayhi salam. Samara says, no, I'll not do that. So Muawiyah says, I'll give you 100,000 dirhams. He says, no. So Muawiyah says 200,000. He says, no, 300,000. When he reaches 400,000, Samara says, okay, I'll do it for you. Don't ask me if she was a Khoja or not. Samara was not a Khoja. 400,000, I will do it for you. What? Make up a hadith that the verse of the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 204, wherein Allah says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يُعْجِبُكَ قَوْلُهُ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَيُشْهِدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا فِي قَلْبِهِ وَهُوَ أَلَدُّ الْخِصَامِ. In this world, there are some people who pretend to be good. When they speak, you want to listen to them. You find that their words are so beautiful. And they bear witness that Allah knows what is in our hearts. But at the same time, they are the worst of enemies. Muawiyah says, make this verse to be about Imam Ali alayhi salam. Make a hadith that says this was revealed about Imam Ali alayhi salam. And Samara does it for the 400,000 dirhams. So tempering of hadith is the first thing that a person who wants to interpret hadith should be aware about. The second thing is tashif. What is tashif? Tashif, again, if you recall, in those days, no computers, no spell checking, no photocopying machines, everything done by hand. You have to copy volumes and volumes by hand. Sometimes people used to make mistakes. A sin would become a sheen, for example. A jim would become a ha, for example. That is known as tashif. Now, how dangerous can tashif be? In order to understand how dangerous tashif can be, we look at a very interesting anecdote from the time of Hajjaj. Abdul Malik ibn Marwan was a tyrant, and he appointed Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi, who was an even worse tyrant, as one of his governors. So Hajjaj at one time, he captures the followers of Abdullah ibn Zubayr. And he writes a letter to Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, who is the ruler at the time. What should I do with these prisoners? So Abdul Malik ibn Marwan decides that he wants their names to come. He says, احصيهم واكتب أسماءهم. Count them and write their names. He writes that, and then he gives it to his special secretary who was in charge of putting the seal, the stamp, before sending out the letter. When that secretary looks at this letter, he knows that amongst those people who have been captured by Hajjaj, one of the men is his worst enemy. He says, I have to take this opportunity to take the worst revenge I can on this man. So what does he do? He adds a dot on top of that ha. Instead of ihsihim, he makes it ikhsihim. And then he puts the stamp and sends it to Hajjaj, and Hajjaj does it. What is the difference between ihsihim and ikhsihim? Ihsihim means count them. Ikhsihim means castrate them. Make them eunuchs. And Hajjaj does it. One dot. Now imagine, in our ahadith, there are some ahadith that have this kind of problem. If we are not aware and we start opening the books of hadith and we start interpreting, then we can cause so much problem. So much problem. And we all know the mas'ala about the death, the martyrdom anniversary of Janab Fatimatu Zahra salawatullahi wa salamu alayha is caused by something similar. When we find in the riwayat, it says, Inna Fatimata makathat ba'da Rasulillah 75 yawma, or 95 yawma. 70 and 90 are written in the same way, you just have to move the dots. Because we don't know whether it is 70 or 90, so we're not sure when exactly was her martyrdom. Now if a person doesn't know these things and he goes into the riwayat, he will not understand. So that is the second problem. The third is the problem of an-naql bil-ma'na What does that mean? People would listen to what the Aimma alayhimus salam were saying, and then they would relate. They would not be able to relate word for word verbatim. Many of them would relate the meaning in their own words. That is known as an-naql bil ma'na. And the Aimma alayhimus salam have allowed us, as long as you maintain the same meaning without adding anything or removing anything, they have allowed us to relay the meaning of what they have said, if we cannot relay the words. But there were times when they wanted the exact words to be written down. And that is why when Abu Basir, the blind companion of our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, who always used to have a scribe with him, would write down the narrations. One day he comes to the Imam and he asks the Imam regarding Al-Mahdi, Sahib al-Zaman, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif. And the Imam asks him, Abu Basir, where is your scribe today? Where is that man whom you always bring with you who writes down the narrations? He said, oh Imam, today he had some work, he could not come. So the Imam said, okay, I will get you another scribe. So he calls one of his companions and he says, sit down here and write the answer for Abu Basir. I will say the answer, you write the answer. So sometimes the Aimma alayhim salam were very particular. They wanted the narrations to be written down. So an-naql bil ma'na. The fourth thing that we should be aware of if you want to understand hadith is the concept of taqiyya. Sometimes the Aimma alayhim salam would say something taqiyatan, out of taqiyya. We all know the famous event of Ali ibn Yaqtin, who was advised by the seventh Imam to perform wudu the way the Ahlus Sunnah perform wudu. Why? Because somebody had gone to complain to the Khalifa that Ali ibn Yaqtin, who is your wazir, he is a Shia, a Rafidi. So they said, okay, let's test him. Let's see how does he do wudu. Does he do it the Shia way or the Sunni way? Just before they came to test him, a letter arrives from the seventh Imam saying, oh Ali, do your wudu like this. Ali is surprised, Ali ibn Yaqtin, why the Imam wants me to do my wudu like this? But he just follows the instructions. When the person comes to see, he is hiding and seeing how Ali ibn Yaqtin does his wudu, he finds him doing it like a Sunni. Then there is no way to punish this man now because his wudu is like. And then after that the Imam writes him another letter and says, now continue the way you used to do in the past. This is taqiyya. We need to be aware of this if you want to interpret the hadith. What about apparent contradictions in hadith? A person who is not aware, how will he deal with two hadith that say opposite things? Like what, for example? Like a hadith from the sixth Imam which says, Inna min al-haqq al-rakib ala al-mashi an yaqula lahu at-tariq. It is the right of the person who is riding on a horse when he sees somebody walking on the road to tell him, at-tariq, at-tariq, give me way. It is the right of him. It is his right to say that. And another hadith also from the sixth Imam that says, min al-jawr qawlu al-rakib lil-mashi at-tariq. It is a dhulm of a rider to tell the person who is walking at-tariq. One hadith says it is his right to say at-tariq, one hadith says it is dhulm to say at-tariq. What will you do with this type of two opposite hadith? If you don't know how to deal with the hadith, you don't know how to understand the hadith, the complexities, how will a person deal with this kind of hadith? It's not as simple as we think. One answer that has been given to this by Mullah Faith Kashani, he says, if the road is big, then it is not proper for a person who is riding the horse to shout at a person who is walking, at-tariq, at-tariq. But if the road is narrow, then you have to tell the person so that he moves out of the way. This is his interpretation. There are apparent contradictions. You can only understand these contradictions if you know how to interpret the hadith. And there's a beautiful philosophy, especially with regards to contradiction of hadith with the Quran, which has been brought up by none other than our marja, Sayyid Ali al-Husayni al-Sistani, may Allah give him a long life. in which he says you should also check if the hadith is contradicting the ruh of the Quran. Not only the verses of the Quran, but the ruh of the Quran. It is a lengthy discussion, we will not go into that. And finally, interpreting the matan. Before we get to the matan, we said it's matan and sanad, right? The sanad of the hadith, those people who have narrated. Qala fulan, an fulan, an fulan. Mr. X narrates from Mr. Y, who narrates from Mr. Z, that the Prophet said ABC. That is called sanad. In the sanad, we want to know if a sanad is sahih or not. Even in that there is a problem. Some scholars say this man is a reliable man. Some scholars say the same man is not reliable. There are so many like that. We have people like Sahal ibn Ziyad. Half of our scholars say he's reliable, the other half says he's not reliable. What will you do? We have a person like Muhammad ibn Sinan. Some scholars say reliable, others say not reliable. What will you do? That is as far as sanad is concerned. Okay, now when you go into the actual hadith, even at the time of the A'imma alayhimus salam, people could not understand sometimes some of the ahadith. A person comes to the sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. He says, we have heard a narration from the Holy Prophet in which the Prophet has said, إن اختلاف أمتي رحمة. Indeed, the ikhtilaf of my ummah is a blessing. The sixth Imam says, yes, the Prophet said this. So the man asks him, إن كان اختلافهم رحمة فاجتماعهم عذاب. If you are saying that the ikhtilaf and the disunity of the community is a rahmah, then the unity and the ijtima' must be an adhab. The Imam said, no, you have not understood this hadith. This is not the meaning of the hadith. Here the word ikhtilaf does not mean disunity. Ikhtilaf has another meaning. It means to frequently visit someone. And that is why we have in Ziyarat Jami'ah wa mukhtalaful malaika. O household of Ahlul Bayt, you are the people whom the angels visit frequently. Ikhtilaf here does not mean disunity. So you can imagine at the time of our Aimma alayhim Islam, people would not understand sometimes the hadith. What about us now after 1400 years? Do we expect that we will open the books of hadith and say, Qala Rasulullah, Qala Imam Ali, and you don't know what it is all about? Some words have changed over time. You have a word in Arabic like falsafa, which means philosophy. The hadith talk against falsafa, they talk against philosophy. Does it mean that philosophy is bad? No. Because the falsafa at that time meant something else, today it means something else. We have a hadith that talk against ijtihad. You mean to say ijtihad is wrong? Those who are against ijtihad, by the way, and Marja'iyah use this kind of hadith, that the Imam has said against ijtihad. But the word ijtihad means something different today than what it did 1400 years ago. Do you know how a word can change in meaning over time? And therefore, those who don't understand the methodology, they don't understand the sciences of hadith, they are not qualified to interpret the hadith. They are not qualified. One final example, and then we can go into the masail. روي أن عليا صلوات الله وسلامه عليه اللهم صل على مر على منارة طويلة فأمر بهدمها. It is narrated that one day our first Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was walking past a manara. What is a manara? A minaret, right? فأمر بهدمها, and he ordered that it should be destroyed. ثم قال لا ترفع المنارة إلا مع سطح المسجد. No minaret should be made taller than the roof of the masjid. Now you tell me, where, in which Muslim country do you have minarets the size of the roof of the masjid? Everywhere it is tall. The Shias have their tall minarets, the Sunnis have their tall minarets. So what do we do here? We have a clear hadith of the first Imam saying that one day he passed by a tall minaret and he ordered, demolish this. There should be no minaret taller than the roof of the masjid. So what should we do? Should we demolish our minarets? The problem is that we do not understand the meaning of the word manara. If you go into the depth of it, you will realize manara does not mean these minarets that we have. In those days, there would be lamp posts. They would make a pillar and they would put a torch on top of that pillar. And that would be known as a manara. It would be something to guide the people, a light for the people in the dark alleys. That is what Imam Ali alayhi salam is saying. Don't let it be higher than the roof of the masjid. Not the minarets that we have today. You see? And there are scholars until today who use this hadith to say, look, you people are building minarets and it is against the teachings of our first Imam alayhi salam. So, the conclusion we derive therefore is, Allah Azza wa Jalla has given us guidance in the form of Quran and Hadith. We have Quran, we have Hadith. We have to ensure if we want to derive the guidance correctly, then we should do it after having the knowledge of doing so. If we do not have the appropriate knowledge, let us not go quickly into it. Let us not be hasty in taking out a hadith, in taking out verses to prove our case. Let us be sure that what we are saying is correct. Please recite one salawat ala Muhammad wa alihi. Tonight is the night of the Wafaat of Khadija al-Kubra salawatullahi wa salamu alayha. Allahumma salli. We first offer our condolences to Rasulullah. We offer our condolences to Fatima al-Zahra. We offer our condolences to the Ahlul Bayt and especially to our Imam. Assalamu alayka ya sahib al-asr wal-zaman. أحسن الله لك العزاء في جدتك الطاهرة خديجة الكبرى. O 12th Imam, we give you our condolences on the martyrdom of your pure grandmother Khadija. Who is Khadija? Khadija is the one who gave everything for Islam. She sacrificed everything for Islam. Had it not been for her sacrifices, we would not be here today. It is said that when Khadija al-Kubra accepted the religion of Islam, she was the first woman to accept Islam, all her friends started abandoning her. And this was especially difficult for her when she was pregnant with Fatima al-Zahra salawatullahi alayha. She felt that loneliness, but then Allah Azza wa Jal knows what is in the heart of those who are His close people, His chosen ones. One day Rasulullah comes home and he sees Khadija is talking. He asks her, Khadija, whom are you talking with? She says, I am talking with the child in my womb. She is consoling me. Oh mother, do not feel lonely. Do not feel lonely. I am with you. Allah is with you. Rasulullah witnesses that. And Rasulullah used to love Khadija so much that even after she passed away from this world, he would always remember her. But Khadija, I will say, oh Khadija, you are so lucky. When you passed away from this world, Rasulullah himself gave you the ghusl and the kafan. He took you into your grave himself, entering inside the grave and laying you to rest inside the grave. But oh Khadija, come to Karbala on the day of Ashura. Look at your grandson Hussein. Look at how he removes the spearhead from the chest of Ali ibn al-Akbar. carries the body of Qasim back to the tent. Oh Khadija, look at how he takes Ali al-Asghar, walking back, walking forth, back and forth. How can I take the baby to his mother? What reply will I give? But after all this, when Imam Hussein is all alone, he goes into the battlefield. This is the son of Asadullah. When he goes into the battlefield, the thousands of enemies who are against him, they start scattering around. Everybody is afraid of Al-Hussein. He charges like a lion. Nobody can come in front of him. So what do? And they start shooting arrows and throwing spears. And those who didn't have anything, they would take stones and throw it on Imam al-Hussein. Until Imam al-Hussein came down into the hot sands of Karbala. Now the people are asking one another, has he died? Has he died? So one Mal'oon said, if you want to know whether he has died, turn towards the tent. The moment he said that, Imam Hussein stood up and said, how dare you talk about attacking the tent? I am still alive. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. مات من حسين.